2 was pretty disappointing. And with such an active community around it, Codemasters heard the criticism. They heard it loud and they heard it clear. So here we are with Grid Autosport. Now, apology games aren't usually the best, so let's see how this one holds up. For Grid 2, someone at Codemasters decided they should make a Need for Speed game. This is strange because firstly, Need for Speed hasn't been good for a long time, and secondly because, thanks to their race driver, F1, and particularly dirt games, Codes has really created a groove and an audience for itself. If it ain't broke, don't fix it should be their company motto, and Autosport is actually quite good. Firstly, with any racing game, the handling model is where you need to start. Does that sound dull? Yes, it does, but the way cars physically handle when racing is what separates a Gran Turismo from a Burnout and a Motorstorm from a Dirt 3. If the spectrum of comparison is Grid 2 at one end, arcadey, jittery, inaccurate, and F1 2013 at the other, precise, weighty but still fun, Grid Autosport sits about halfway, but slightly closer to Grid 2 than F1. This is still a bit disappointing. Codemasters seem oddly determined to make this a more arcade experience, but the formula should be simple. Do Dirt 3 on-road. Easy. Still, Autosport is a huge improvement, and the difference between the classes and even the cars within those classes is big, and genuinely needs you to learn how to control an open-wheeler over a touring car. Now on to the graphics. The cars are modelled really nicely, and while there's a bit too much clipping when you crash, the damage modelling is also excellent. Crashing in Grid Autosport is a fairly epic experience. They've added 2 new interior camera views, which are nice, particularly if you're someone who likes the immersion of a cockpit view, even if it's generally harder to play, but they've done a weird blurry thing. Presumably, this is to keep your eyes on the road, but your eyes do that anyway, that's just how they work, so the blurring actually becomes a little bit distracting. We would far rather see lots of lavish detail, but after Grid 2 didn't have an interior view to save disk space, we imagine this is just to do the same so they don't have to detail the interiors properly. Still, overall, it's a great looking game. The tracks included are also great, with lots of real-world ones to pick from. This is getting far closer to the professional motorsport experience a large audience are craving. The different races you can compete in are your standard race weekends, time trials, drifting, which is hard at first but really fun, and also endurance. Endurance in other games like Gran Turismo means exactly what it says: endurance. Usually multiple hours, here it means a default 8-minute race where tyre management is the only defining factor, but no pit stops. That's just weird. It just means everyone gets more slidey and your car is harder to handle progressively until the race ends. No ditch into the pits at the opportune moment and leapfrogging people with your tactical nous. No, it just gets worse until it ends. Multiplayer is loads of fun, particularly touring cars, where you can really rough up other players, and they're strong enough to be fairly forgivable when the inevitable moron driving the wrong way appears. Overall, Grid Autosport, on its own 2 feet, is a fun, slightly too arcade multi-discipline racing game that has a fairly short lifespan but will keep you entertained enough. As an answer to the critics of Grid 2, it falls shy. Hopefully, Codemasters gets the message this time and keeps going more towards Dirt and not Need for Speed.